Hello and welcome to another Mr. Carter Science Special. In this video we're going to be looking at pathogens and how they are spread. As always, keep your eyes open for the syllabus references as we go through the video. So a pathogen is a disease-causing microorganism. That could either be a virus, a fungi, a bacteria or a protocyst like the pathogen that causes malaria. And the pathogens that cause disease can be spread in 5 different ways, either person to person, airborne, foodborne, sometimes called the oral route, waterborne, animalborne or using animal vectors, and through sexual contact, sexually transmitted infections, STIs, or sometimes called STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. And over the following video we're going to go through each one of those in detail and look at a couple of examples. The first method by which a pathogen can be spread is known as person to person, and this is often spread through bodily fluids, fluids such as blood, saliva, through skin contact, through cuts, through contact with the eyes or nose or mouth. And an example of this is Ebola, and we can see here this is the Ebola virus, and in September of 2014 there was an outbreak of the Ebola virus in Africa, in West Africa, in areas around Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia. And people would often become infected with the Ebola virus after washing and preparing the dead body of an already infected person, following cultural rituals and norms of the area. The virus would then spread very quickly because you only need a tiny amount of bodily fluid from an infected person to become infected yourself. And in villages and towns of West Africa, this quickly became an epidemic. In particular, Ebola is such a dangerous disease because Ebola, the virus, will cause bleeding from most of the orifices of the body, including the eyes, the nose and the ears. So there is a lot of Ebola around as you clean that body. The second method by which pathogens can be spread is known as airborne infection, and this is the spread of bacteria or viruses through the air. The pathogen can be spread in water droplets when you cough or you sneeze, or indeed through blood or saliva that may have entered the air as well. A couple of examples are the influenza virus, the cold virus, even the bacteria tuberculosis. The cold and the flu viruses can survive for about a day in the air, whereas the tuberculosis bacteria can survive for months as spores in dust, so it can be even more infectious for a much longer time. Another example of a pathogen that can be spread through the air is the fungi known as Clara dieback. It causes Clara dieback. And this can survive and spread in the air as spores before infecting other trees and causing disease in new areas and new environments. The third method by which diseases and pathogens can be spread is foodborne infections, sometimes called the oral route. Pathogens will enter the body through the mouth, hence oral route, and food poisoning can be caused by food that isn't cooked properly or food that's been left out for a long time before it's eaten, so there's been time for bacteria such as Salmonella or E. coli to grow and multiply by binary fission to large enough numbers that the pathogen might get past your body's natural defences and make you feel unwell. One example of this is the Campylobacter bacteria, which causes food poisoning, and it's spread when people touch raw, contaminated food and then spread the pathogen to cooked food that's ready for consumption. Good hygiene practices and good hand washing can prevent this, and that's very important when we're looking at both home kitchens and commercial kitchens. Other pathogens that can be spread through foodborne infections include the bacteria Helicobacter pylori, which causes stomach ulcers, and it's spread when people touch their mouths and then other people's food, or touch other people's food after going to the toilet. Insects can also spread bacteria from feces to food, so it's particularly important for you to keep flies away from your food. For example, they may have landed on some cow poo and be carrying and transmitting any pathogens that may be present on that poo to your food. The third method by which pathogens can be spread is known as waterborne infection. And many bacteria and viruses live in water. And if this water is drunk, diseases like cholera, dysentery, typhoid, and the viral disease polio can be spread. So cholera, for example, is a bacterium, and in developed countries, water is treated to kill these pathogens. This is called good hygiene. And when good hygiene is difficult, for example in poorer areas or during wars or after natural disasters, then these pathogens can grow and easily be spread from person to person by consuming the water. For example, you may find that one family is using the water to drink and prepare food, whilst another family further upstream may have been using the river source of the water to defecate or to clean or wash, and therefore they're spreading any bacteria and pathogens they may have, and that can be consumed by other families using that water source. As I say, this tends to be a rarity, but it does happen when we have breakdowns in infrastructure, often during natural disasters and wars. The next method is known as animal-borne infections or vectors. And some pathogens will need to be carried by something, and this something is called a vector. The vector is often an insect. So one example of that would be the bacteria Yersinia pestis, which is carried by a vector, the flea. Now the flea would often live on rats, who could be argued there's two vectors here, but when the rats would die and the fleas could no longer live on those rats, they would jump off and look for another host, often a human, and when the flea would bite that human, it would inject the bacteria into the human's bloodstream, causing the plague, the bubonic plague, the Black Death. A more common one nowadays is the mosquito, and the mosquito acts as a vector and carries the malaria protocyst, and again it can be injected directly into somebody's blood, infecting somebody from the mosquito bite, and the next time a mosquito lands on a person and bites their blood, the mosquito will get infected with the malaria pathogen and can fly off and then inject somebody else and spread the disease from person to person. The final method we're going to mention today is sexually transmitted infections. The male and the female reproductive systems contain natural defences such as the enzyme lysosomes or mucus, which will protect against pathogens. However, some pathogens can get past these natural defences. For example, AIDS. AIDS is caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, and it's spread by sexual contact with semen or vaginal fluids, or from a pregnant mother to an unborn baby, often during birth when blood might be passed over, or indeed through breastfeeding in the breast milk. Or HIV could be spread through infected blood that you may have got as a blood transfusion in a hospital, or more commonly through drug users sharing needles. A different sexually transmitted infection caused by bacteria is chlamydia, and this is spread through sexual contact with semen or vaginal fluids, and chlamydia causes the vagina or in fact the oviducts, the fallopian tubes, to produce too much mucus, and this will stop the sperm reaching the egg and can cause the lady to become infertile. So how can we prevent sexually transmitted infections? Well, the spread of STIs can be reduced by avoiding direct contact with sexual fluids by utilising a barrier method such as the condom. Screening programs also help to identify people who are infected with STIs so that they can be treated for the diseases. For example, chlamydia, you can receive antibiotics to destroy the bacteria. And with the chlamydia screening in the UK for under 25s, over 200,000 people have been diagnosed with chlamydia each year. Blood that's used in hospitals is also screened for pathogens before it's given to a patient in a transfusion. I hope you've enjoyed this video on looking at how pathogens are spread. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment below to let me know what you've learned and how much you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching.